Hello, Mets fans. I guess everybody's kind of getting used to seeing these Zoom meetings, or I mean, this is how people are working from home and conducting their conference calls and such. So I guess this has just kind of become common here in the last week or two. But I'm Wayne Randazzo. Howie Rose is here too, and we're just missing baseball just like everybody else, right?
Yeah. Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
How long ago did you start growing your beard?
It's probably started right when it was announced that baseball was not going to be coming back for a while. So I'd say about 2 weeks.
Okay. See this? This is about 4 or 5 days. If they start playing baseball in July, you still won't be able to make out a beard on my face. Isn't that pathetic?
Some
Yours
people
looks
have
good.
the gift and some don't,
No, I'd like to go full out Smith Brothers like you. He got no idea who the Smith Brothers were.
Yeah, well, we'll check one off on the Howie. What yesterday should have been opening day. How did you get through what should have been a great day in New York?
The days have all kind of melded into one lately, right? I mean, every day is like every other day. But it really did hit me yesterday morning. And when it really got me was when I listened back to a podcast that I did with Tim Shell, the news director at our flagship WCBS 880. We had recorded that, I think, on Tuesday. So yesterday was Thursday, meaning scheduled opening day. And as I listened back, they, did a little post-production and they put some of Jane Jarvis's organ music from Shea Stadium in the podcast. So there I am, sitting, having breakfast, listening, looking out the window. It's a beautiful day down here. It's sunny, it's warm. And I'm hearing Meet the Mets from Jane Jarvis on the Thomas organ, and I almost went face down straight into my oatmeal. Yeah. That's when it really hit me. And I was a little down. I was kind of depressed yesterday. I really was. It didn't seem real until yesterday that we're missing baseball now.
It was supposed to be the earliest start to the season in baseball history. Now it'll most likely be the latest start. We hope there's a start to the baseball season.
Really?
And, it could go into June, could go beyond that. And I think it'll continue to hit us, especially as it gets warmer, in the cold weather cities, in Chicago, or especially in New York as the weather warms up. People are really going to be feeling like, man, I should be at a baseball game or watching a baseball game right now, and there aren't any.
That's how I felt all day yesterday. And in some ways, Twitter was the best and worst place to be yesterday because all you saw were links to baseball games that people were playing on a pretend basis, either through Stratomatic or the show or whatever other app or, game they use to simulate real baseball. And of course, you had so many games available, old games on either MLB Network, MLB.com, or any place, YouTube, that you go to watch old games. So I was inundated with baseball yesterday the way I hoped that we would under normal circumstances. And frankly, it just didn't fill the void. Nothing can.
It doesn't. I was watching the Cubs and the Mets last night from 1994 opening day, and the Tuffy Rhodes 3-homer game off the dock, and game the Mets won anyway, pretty handedly at Wrigley Field. But it's fun. It's fun to listen to Harry Carey and all that. It's good to see some of those old players again. But it's not the same ball.
Does it not? Because it did for me. Give you, if you even needed it, a deeper appreciation of what we do for a living, realizing yesterday what we were missing, and even listening back to old highlights that might have included you or me or any of our contemporaries?
No, I think I don't take what we do for granted really at all. I don't go to the ballpark any day wishing that I was somewhere else. So it doesn't affect me like that, but it does make me yearn for it. I mean, this is what we love to do, and this is we've been fortunate to have these opportunities, and to not be there is tough. But of course, it pales into comparison with what all these other people are going through, and the doctors and the nurses and everybody that's on the front lines of all this, especially in New York, where they're really fighting this thing.
Yeah, how is Chicago right now? I would assume they're in a similar situation to New York.
Yeah, as far as the shelter in place and all that, it's all about the same. They're starting to shut down some of the parks and stuff.
But I mean, the hospitals, are they getting overloaded?
No, not yet.
Dangerous level?
No, not yet.
That's good.
Not really anything, all like that to this point. I mean, of course, that could change. Maybe it won't if all this sheltering in place is starting to work. Maybe this curve will flatten and all that. But it's not nearly as bad here as it is seemingly in New York.
Yeah, and down here in Florida, I don't know if it's got anything to do with warmer weather or where we are relative to where the more populated areas are. I don't have an explanation for it, but we have grown a lot higher now on the chain, if you will, in terms of number of cases. And as they continue to hopefully develop the opportunity for more people to get tested, and certainly those numbers will grow up or go up, understandably. And I just lean on the doctors, as I think we all should, to get the best information as to when this thing might start to turn in our favor.
As far as what hopes to be a baseball season this year, does your outlook on the Mets change at all with the Syndergaard news?
A little bit, I'm sure. And I think maybe on a more acute level now, because whenever, and again, hopefully we do have a season, but whenever it starts, I think it's going to be more compressed and condensed, never mind simply truncated. I think, and the term I keep going back to is they've got to be careful not to try, although it would be understandable to realize lost revenue, to stuff 2 pounds of tomatoes into a 1 pound can. But I think that's inevitable. And I was glad to see that in the resolution that was reached between the players and the owners, officially just moments ago from when we started our discussion here, the players are going to maintain final say over the schedule. And to me, that's really important, because the game has got to look out for the welfare of the players. They can't overtax them here. So I'm glad that the players will at least have the authority to sign off on the schedule rather than have it dictated to them. But because of that, and because of the fact that more games will be squeezed into less time than usual, I think that's where the Syndergaard injury can really hurt the Mets, because they had the luxury of being able to spread out their starters a little bit more with 6 legit big league starters. Now that's down to 5, and that could pose a problem.
Especially if there are double headers and lots
Exactly.
of them. Right. You really would kind of need a 6-man rotation over 5 days because of that constant need for 2 starters a day. Do you want to see baseball do anything creative or unusual to kind of fill some of this year? Whether that's 7-inning doubleheaders or.
I do. I don't know so much about the 7-inning doubleheaders, although the length of some of these games may make me retract that statement, depending on how the games end up going. But I think this is the perfect opportunity for baseball to just have fun. And if it means experimenting with some things that are either on the table conceptually or have been used in the Atlantic League or some other independent league, this is the time to go for it. You want to throw a pitch clock in, throw a pitch count in, a clock in. You want to put a runner on second base at the beginning of extra innings or an extra inning, the 11th, 12th, whatever. Absolutely. Let's do that this year. You want to throw the DH into the National League, see how that goes? Look, I never would have felt that I'd have it in me to lobby for that until the very recent past. But for a lot of reasons, I'm starting to feel that the DH's time might have come in the National League. And if there's a large enough contingent that feel that way, this would be a great year to experiment with it. So I think everything's got to be on the table. And I think that when baseball comes back, and I believe it's when, not if this year, that we'll be so excited to have it back that any of this discussion about how many games creates a legitimate season will be nothing but a bunch of irrelevant hogwash. We'll be celebrating the game as we never have before. And under those circumstances, it would provide the perfect opportunity to experiment and do some fun things that we've been reluctant to accept.
Yeah, even if it comes down to a point where it's getting late and they can only squeeze in 60 or 70 games.
Great.
Maybe the Marlins have a good stretch and they make the playoff. Anything can kind of happen at that point, and you have a tournament anyway for a playoff and a World Series. I mean, that happens anyway. There's a lot of randomness to that to begin with. So, just kind of throw it out there. I mean, people just want to see games and want to see sports again. So, even if it is a very short season, I think people would still embrace it.
Of course, why wouldn't they? I mean, I've heard people who I respect so much, like Mariano Rivera and Kenny Singleton, say that it wouldn't be a legitimate season. Well, what is a legitimate season anyway? Is there a cutoff where it becomes illegitimate, whether that's 110, 120, 90? To me, it becomes so simplistic, because that's how my mind works anyway. But it just boils down to, wouldn't you rather have 60 or 70 games than none? Yeah. Wouldn't you want to be sitting in front of your television, even if it means into early to mid-November, than yearning for baseball for another however many months it would be until such time as spring training starts next year? I mean, to me, it's just so simple. Anything's better than nothing.
I will say that, as far as what the players are going to go through, it's going to be weird for them to have to ramp back up. I've thought a lot about 1995 and the spring training that happened just as it kind of restarted because the replacement players were gone. They're running the real guys again. The strike was over, and they had to do a quick spring training before the season started in late April. Those guys never had to ramp up and then shut down and then ramp up again. So it's going to be an unusual return to spring training. Guys, they don't seem like they're working out to the same degree because of lack of being able to go to their camps or being able to be around people enough to work. There's going to be a different set of how the players are in shape going into the restart of the season.
Yeah, and there are a number of ways to do it, and you're going to have to really lean on the strength and conditioning and fitness people around the game, the ones who have the brightest minds in that department, to try to figure out, and it isn't an exact science, what the proper length of a spring training type scenario would be. And there are a lot of ways you could do it. If we get to the point in the calendar year that seems inevitable, where the weather will have turned in the cold weather cities, then you could have that, quote, spring training period in the hometowns of these baseball teams, and conceivably, based on circumstances and whether they'd be comfortable inviting people into the ballpark, crowds. I don't know if these games would be played with fans or not, at least early on, but you could charge fans a nominal amount to watch intra-squad games. And I'm not talking about getting the Yankees and the Mets together or the Dodgers and the Angels together. I suppose some people would lobby for that. But, spring training is largely about getting guys in shape. And you don't have to charge everybody some minimal rate to come to the ballpark and watch intra-squad games, and use that as your spring training.
I know there's a lot of talk about with New York being really the epicenter of this. If the Mets and Yankees will even be allowed to be in New York to play those games early on in what would be the restart of the baseball schedule. And I know it's been thrown out that they could maybe start on the road and play all road games, or the Yankees could use Tropicana Field as kind of a home stadium for a while. The Mets maybe could use Marlins Park. Kind of everything on the table right now.
I'm commuting, baby. I like that. You know what? I hope it doesn't come to that. I really don't. I fear a couple of things. That, we talk about New York being the epicenter, and clearly it is right now. But I don't think they would green light getting everything together again until such time that, individual cities wouldn't necessarily have to be compromised. I think it should be kind of an all or nothing. It's a lot, just given what we've all gone through and the rigors and realities of travel. That's another thing here too. I'm kind of stepping off the track now, but let's say they find that arguably July 4th, which I think would be a fabulous way to celebrate the return of baseball. Maybe it takes until July 4th. Well, what do? Do you pick the schedule up from July 4th and simply play it out through the end of the year, tack on some games from early at the end of the season? If you create a whole new schedule, can you imagine the complications that would require in terms of hotel dates and the logistics of getting a baseball team from point A to point B? Yeah. I'd worry about that.
Well, good luck to Brian Small and secretaries all around Major League Baseball. If that were the case. Let's see, a couple people had some questions for us on Twitter. One from a guy who says he remembers you doing Stratomatic play-by-play on WFAN.
Oh, my goodness.
You did the 1969 against the 1978 Yankees. He says he still has some of the audio. Do you remember doing that?
Yes, I do. And you want to hear the one thing I remember from that more than any other, and it was so innocent and it was so unintentional, but a fellow by the name of Steve Barkin, who used to work at Stratomatic NI, and I don't know what the occasion was, why we did it. It was back in the 1980s, I think. Maybe it was a little later. Maybe it was during the strike. I don't know when it was. But we did a simulation. We literally played a Stratomatic game in the WFAN studios. And, you know, I mean, I announced it. It wasn't like doing a legitimate play-by-play, but we tried to make it sound as much as a simulation of what Shea Stadium would sound like. Yeah. Now, you remember Shea Stadium, I think. But I remember that we interspersed some airplanes flying overhead during the play-by-play, because that's how it worked at Shea. I mean, we're still close to LaGuardia, of course, at Citi Field. It's right next door, but the flight patterns have changed a little bit. And anyhow, it was de rigueur for airplanes to be flying overhead while a game was going on at Shea. So we're just, you know, running that, I don't know what it was, tape of an airplane every few minutes. And somebody, and this is long before Twitter or anything else, somebody calls in and said, was that your idea of a sick joke, having an airplane flying overhead when Thurman Munson was hitting? Wow. And I'm going, come on, do you really think, do you really think that anybody would be dumb enough and sensitive enough to think that? But that's what I remember from that simulation. Wow. And I did manage the 69 Mets, and I'm sorry, Gil, I embarrassed you.
You know, I will say I had to buy a PS4 so I can get MLB The Show while we're all sitting here. I haven't had a gaming system since I was in college, so it's been a while. But they do offer a lot of legends, but they do so kind of by season. So I have this dynasty team I'm working on, and one of the players they gave me is Willie Mays, but the 1973 version specifically of Willie Mays with his Mets baseball card and all that. So I've got an aging Willie Mays on my team.
Well, make the best of it, because, you know, this is a great story about Willie's last major league hit. Willie's last hit won a World Series game, Game 2 in Oakland in 1973. But the beauty of that hit is in the highlight, if you could find it, because I'm not sure that, and I think on the official MLB World Series highlight film you could pick it up. But if you watch that hit, and it came in 12th inning, I'm going to say, of Game 2 off of Raleigh fingers, and it was a little 38 hopper through the middle. And as that ball trickled past the mound on its way through into center field, you could see Raleigh fingers, the pitcher, throw his glove up in disgust. He could not believe that ball got through. Turned out to be what proved the game-winning hit in Game 2 of the 1973 World Series, Willie Mays' last hit.
Yeah, it's pretty funny to see some of these old games and these old highlights. I saw the John Boy he's just tweeting about whatever old highlight he can find at this point, and he showed a big argument for the 1973 World Series that involved
Same game
and Willie Mays.
Same game, because Buddy Harrelson. Well, have you been with me when I've been with Ray Fosse and we get into this playful argument about whether he tagged Buddy or not?
No.
Oh, this is pretty good. When do we see Ray Fosse? Every 3 years?
Yeah.
The first thing he does when he sees me is storm into the booth and say, I tagged him. Well, you watch this. It was, I think it was Felix Millan batting with a game tied in 10th, 11th, whatever inning it was. Willie Mays was on deck. And Felix hits a fly ball to medium depth left field. Joe Rudy, a great outfielder, makes the catch. Buddy tags, comes down the line. He comes in standing. I don't know, Willie was on his knees. I don't know if he was trying to tell him to get down or Buddy just stood up on his own or what. But anyway, Buddy comes in standing. Fosse reaches back. I think it was Augie Donatelli was the umpire, and he calls Buddy out. And that's when the argument ensued. And that's the classic picture of Willie on his knees with his hands outstretched, asking Augie Donatelli, how could you possibly call him out? And quite the argument ensued with Yogi and Harrelson and Willie. And the Mets, again, ended up winning that game on Willie's hit. But that argument, and Ray Fosse, I ignited that the first time I ever met Fosse, I don't know how many years ago. And he keeps it going to this day whenever I see him. Great guy, by the way, Ray Fosse.
Well, we're supposed to see the Oakland A's at some point this year, so we'll see if the Mets still make that trip. I mean, if it's a shortened season, I don't know if they'll even have interleague play this year. They might just say it doesn't make any sense to do it.
It doesn't. I totally agree with that. And again, I don't know, what length of schedule they can or will prepare for based on when the green light comes. But it may well be if they're going to play, if it comes down to 60 or 70 or so games, then don't you think they have to have a heavy concentration of divisional play, get rid of the interleague play, minimize the travel as much as possible? Don't make these guys, especially if you're going to be playing double headers, make coast-to-coast trips unnecessarily.
Right. Yeah, I think they'll probably think about that. Anything else before we jump off here that you'd like to say to Mets fans?
Yeah, just hang in there, man. It's tough on all of us in so many ways, but it really did crystallize yesterday when it was supposed to have started that it didn't. But, all we can do now is what Dr. Fauci and everybody else in the medical profession are telling us to do. Just stay safe, follow the orders, and hopefully we'll be back on the air doing Mets baseball, which is what we love to do, sooner than later. But everybody just hang in and stay well.
All right, well, maybe we'll check back in a week or two and see how things are progressing. Howie, good to talk to you. I'll see you soon.
All right, Wayne, those Stratomatic replays are starting to sound pretty good to me.
Let's go!